The internet is a huge place. And if you are vulnerable and you can be yourself and you have your own voice, the right communities will end up finding you. Understanding that it will hurt, that you will get judged, but also understanding that you'll be judged regardless of whether you actually succeed on social media or not. So you might as well be judged for actually making it on social media. People are going to judge me anyway. They might as well judge me for the thing I want to do.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, Sierra founder, Harvard MBA, science fiction nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Every week, we debate startup news, interview changemakers, answer listener questions, and share personal insights. Join our movement of over 40,000 members and get transcripts, resources, and community at www.bravesea.com. Stay well and stay brave.
Hey, Javi, good to see you on the show. I'm excited.
Hey, man, it's a full circle moment. We met in a podcasting course and now we're doing this. So let's go.
I know. Look at us. It's been 600 episodes since I took that course on podcasting. And now you have 300,000 followers on TikTok, millions of likes. I mean, I'm in a different order of magnitude. I'm at 80,000 followers, but it's like long form, boring business. And there you are, good looking, ripped, doing book talk videos. But yeah, Javi, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey guys. So my name is Javi. I'm a former startup EdTech founder turned content creator. I've been doing the content game for around 1.5 years now. And I think it's just been a crazy journey. So I've amassed over 3 million followers across all platforms, obviously across different accounts. And yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, amazing. So very different audiences, very different groups, but I just thought it's nice just to catch up and reconnect. So I think what was really interesting, obviously, is that we met at that On Deck course, which is an online academy. It was the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then, you went to build a startup. That startup failed. Then you had to go through a personal crisis, and then you went to become a creator, rising star. Okay, so that's the journey a bit. But why did you join the On Deck podcasting course? I'm curious. You share your reason, I'll share my reason.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a great question because I think I've always wanted to do creatorship or content media in some way ever since I was a kid. And I think at the time, podcasting seemed like the most feasible or the most trending opportunity at the time. And it was something I wanted to test out and do stuff with. And that's why I joined. I did not know it would take us like on the journey that it did. But yeah, at least that's where we met, right?
So yeah, I mean, it'd be funny if imagine like you and I were doing our Zoom call back then. And then future version of yourself will just turn up now. And then you're like looking ripped, like you are with your shirtless sleeves.
I would not believe it. I think me in 2022, when that happened, would not believe that this is happening right now. But yeah.
Yeah. That'd be so funny, right?
Yeah.
For me, when I joined that course, first of all, it was the pandemic, right? So I was bored out of my mind. So I just wanted to learn. And obviously On Deck was a bit of a community to hang out people. It has that social tribe, which I actually enjoyed. And obviously I think podcasting was something that I listened a lot to. I listened to a lot of podcasts and I was like, okay, it'd be nice to maybe try exploring a podcast. So if you ask me, yeah, would I believe that I now have 600 podcast episodes all about Southeast Asia tech?
Wow.
And the number of followers, etc. Obviously, I wouldn't believe it either. But I don't know. I think it was just be like a surprise that the podcast went off. But I don't think it was a personal transformation the same way it was for you. So because I think the context here is that when we did a podcast fellowship, you were very set on building this company called Upnext, which was, I guess, an on deck for Southeast Asia or like a personal skills upskilling for Southeast Asia tech folks, right? So that's what you were thinking back then. So tell us through that original kind of like product market fit and what happened.
Yeah, so pretty much joined the On Deck Fellowship. When that happened, I got the light bulb moment, I guess, to just like port it over to Southeast Asia and do it myself. It was very online. It was very, during the pandemic, online courses, especially live ones, were just a great way to meet new people. Again, many people bored out of their minds. So that was kind of the need, I guess, we were filling, at least like someone being productive while that was happening. And then, yeah.
And when you did that, what was the experience building Upnext and what happened to Upnext?
Yeah, so we started Upnext around like a couple months, I think, after the fellowship. It's actually funny because I showed my little pitch deck to actually one of the founders of On Deck. I showed the pitch deck. I made this like website on Webflow that was like pretty much like, oh, On Deck, but it's like Southeast Asia focused and it's like for young people who are like bored. Show that to the founder of On Deck. I think it's Julian, and he basically told me to fuck off. He was like, bro, this is plagiarism. What are you doing? And he was like grilling me on the call. And then after that call, I was like, you know what? Fuck this guy. I'm going to do it anyway. So a couple months later, we ran a few cohorts, had a couple of hundred students at the time. And then that was when we raised like our initial seed venture round. And then from there, we just like worked on it for a few years. I gradually like kept increasing the number of students. So the revenue was decent. But then after the pandemic when the pandemic was starting to wind down, that's when we saw like a sharp decrease in demand for online courses since people want to do things in real life. Even like On Deck shut down a lot of its fellowship programs. And so my co-founder and I talked and we're like, yeah, it's probably the right time to, I guess, like explore other pivots, which we did a lot of. But after seeing like none of those really panned out, it was just a time for a fresh reset. And so pretty much like sunset of the company.
Yeah. And so what was that like? Because, obviously it's a tough time. Nobody wants to be like, oh, I'm super bullish on this company. I'm going to raise money. I'm going to teach
Yeah.
people. And then now I'm going to start to ramp it down. Like such a terrible experience, right? So what was that experience like?
We were talking about this not too long ago, but I took it really hard. Like there were days where I wasn't sleeping and eating. I was like losing weight. And, when you start like to lay off like some of the core employees who've been with you from day one, and then obviously me and my co-founder at the time started fighting a lot about the direction and what to do next. It was just a very unpleasant memory and feelings. It just feels like you're dragging it out for longer than it needs to because you have this responsibility. But once you kind of come to terms with it, then I think that's when it starts to get a bit better and you can like sit with yourself a bit more. And then that's when we ended up sunsetting. And after everything, regardless of what happened, I still took it hard on myself. And I guess that was the start of everything that happened next.
So how did you take it hard on yourself? As in what, like you just got depressed, stopped talking to people, or you went drinking? What does it mean to take it hard on yourself in the founder context, I guess? Or you like work even harder and you go on Reddit? I don't know. What does that?
I think it was definitely two things. I started one just blaming myself a lot for it shutting down, and like I read it as me not working hard enough, me not executing on the right things. And so I think the principle I had at the time was I just defaulted to volume, like try as many experiments as I can, try as many ways to pivot or like save the company, get revenue at all costs, talk to more people. That went on for a few. And then there was a moment where I just got really burnt out. And that's when I had to talk with my co-founder and I was like, I can't, this isn't working. I think we need a fresh restart. And then that's when I just started bed rotting, honestly, for like maybe a couple of weeks. And then had all those existential discussions. It just felt like I failed myself. And that, at the time I was trying to prove to myself when I was doing the startup, I was this young, like 20-year-old kid. By the time we were sunsetting, I was 22. And it really felt like this is the first major thing that like I fucked up on. And I think that's my definition of taking it hard on myself. Lots of self-blame and insecurity, honestly, about it, right? Because I really thought it was my fault. And, to some extent, founders can do whatever, but maybe I still have some of those thoughts, but at least we moved on from that.
And one interesting context is that you're Filipino, you studied in Canada, all of us were remote and distributed. And there's a part where you're trying to figure out what's next. And today, obviously in the Philippines, the content creator, but I'm just kind of curious, like, how did you even go through that crisis moment? Like, what were you thinking? How are you doing your choices? What were you exploring? What were you testing? How did you get out of bed?
Yeah. So after we closed down the startup and stuff, I actually went back to school in Canada. So I studied in the University of Toronto, but I basically did not attend any classes. I was ChatGPTing everything back when it was still in the version 3, like GPT-3. So it was really crappy, but it used to be like on the honor roll dean's list in my first 2 years. And then I went from a 3.9 GPA to like a 2.6 GPA ever since I came back because I was just focused on working on other different things. I think the self-blame and the insecurity really just translated to me working on myself. So that's when I really started reading a lot of books. I went to the gym a lot. I got my diet right. Just because I was trying to, I guess, regain some of the confidence that I had maybe prior to the start of failing. And that was kind of like the villain arc, so to speak, in a lot of ways, trying to come back to myself, build myself up again. And I think it really laid the foundation for what I did next for the creator stuff, right?
I love the phrase villain arc. Like, Jeff Bezos when I was a villain arc. I mean, normally it's not used as a positive way.
I am really proud of myself for that moment of time because for context, right?
Yeah.
Imagine I went back to school after taking a couple years off. So all my friends had graduated and it was the middle of winter and I had zero friends. I had nothing to do because the startup was down. I was ChatGPTing everything. And I think in that time, I definitely could have just like folded and just been like, it's okay. Let's wait it out. Let's calm down. But instead, I started working on the myself side of the equation. It's kind of, I say villain arc because it's kind of like mostly used when two people break up and the one who was hurt worse, like all of a sudden like has this crazy transformation. I felt like that way with my startup. So that is why I refer to it as a villain arc. But it was tough. Lots of lonely nights. I genuinely look back at some of the journal entries that I have. It's funny to see like I still had this crazy optimism that I could still do something even if my confidence was an all-time low at the point. So it was tough.
So, I think it's one thing, obviously, to, be a founder, and 95% of startups fail, right? So I think every founder kind of goes through this super down component. I don't think anybody fails and it's like, hell yeah, I'm crushing it. I'm getting out of bed ASAP.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I'm kind of curious because, like you said, you went, you went back and you were a student, and you could have gone and graduated and joined a startup. You could be a founder again, but you end up being a creator. So, what was that exploration phase for you in terms of that rebirth?
That's a great question. As I mentioned, I think doing content creation online was this thing that I always wanted to do as a kid. Upnext, the first EdTech startup, was kind of like my first crack at it because it was a media company, right? We'd record, we'd have like these like sessions, we'd make the edits. And I think after that time of really trying to understand myself and what I wanted to do, there was a moment where I was just like, why don't we go for this content creation influencer route? I mean, at the time, it was like a super long shot, had zero experience with social media, did not know the technique at all. But yeah, it was honestly just that period of coming back to myself and just reflecting on what I wanted to do for the next 3 years. And I remember I wrote on my journal before all of this happened, I was like, in 1 year, they're going to ask me how I did it. And I would not believe the results that happened after that 1 year. So that was the crux of me like deciding to finally admit to myself that it was what I wanted to do for the longest time, right? Because I think there's a lot of maybe mental blocks when it comes to admitting to yourself that you want something, especially if it's the thing that you've always wanted to do. So just being honest with myself, being vulnerable, writing and reflecting a lot was really how I explored it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So I guess the tricky part is obviously everybody wants to be significant, right? And nobody wants to be nobody, right? In that sense. Why be a creator out of all things in order for you to achieve that thing, which is to be somebody?
I think being a creator, what it meant for me is that I get to do the things I am passionate about and I genuinely just like doing. Instead of maybe having, like, say, as a startup founder, where the model is you have to pick a select niche of customer and all of your attention is focused on them. I felt like being a creator to me at the time was I get to focus on myself and I get to just try and understand myself enough and the best parts of myself that I can share with people. So I think that's a different perspective because you'd usually think about it the other way. Here it's more internal facing and it really resonated with me at the time because I was really working on myself. And I think it reflects now because, literally my hobbies are I go to the gym, I read books, I play music, I go to concerts and festivals and whatever. And all of that is just my content. Like if I have a relationship, it becomes my content. If I get close with my sister or I have a great day with my mom, that's content. And I think that's what makes me really happy about it is that you just kind of be yourself. But I think we can talk about this later, but being yourself also has like a lot of hurdles on its own. But that's how I would describe what I love so much about being a creator, right?
And so there you are, you decide to be a creator, right? Like start TikTok or Instagram? Like how did you get that? Also, I think from my own personal experience, going on any of these channels and starting your first few shorts or TikToks or whatever it is, it's really lonely and honestly, nobody watches anything. So I'm just kind of curious, what was it like for you?
Yeah. So this is the part of the journey that a lot of people don't know about, which is it actually took me roughly 6 months before I found any meaningful traction. And during those 6 months, I was just posting like every other day, getting less than 500 to 1,000 views on these like all sorts of random cringe gym videos or voiceover type of random TikToks. But honestly, it was the only thing I could do at the time because it's like, what else am I going to do? I have no friends. I have no projects to work on besides like reading and going to the gym. What else am I going to do? And so it was really like putting those reps in, gradually just becoming comfortable with the idea of people judging you. That I guess is how it started. And I guess I can expound on that because I think there was this point in time when there was like a shifting moment and the click where I just stopped caring what other people think. Because I was in Toronto, and as you can imagine, from an Asian society where circles are small, people will talk. There's a lot of judgment when it comes to doing social media. But once I had that mindset within me, I was just like, fuck it. Why don't we go for it? Do the most random big balls move I can think of, which was the first series, which is the shirtless book reviews. So it's exactly what it sounds like. I am reviewing a book and I'm shirtless. Two things I love, going to the gym and reading books. So that was the moment. And it was just so freeing, man. Like, I think at that point was the first time I really felt alive and free in another country, supporting myself. So yeah, that's how it started.
So let's talk about that because I saw that and I thought it was quite interesting because you were doing a review of The Great Gatsby without your shirt on. And I was thinking to myself, like, those are some great pecs, great muscles there. I mean,
Thank you.
I know the story of Great Gatsby, and honestly, I don't remember what your review was, but so
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's me as a consumer. Again, maybe I'm different. I'm a guy. I'm a dad with a dad bod who respects the workouts that you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And I already read A Great Gatsby, so maybe I'm not the target audience. Maybe I am the target audience. I don't even know what the audience is. But I was just kind of curious, like, why do you think that popped off from your perspective, and what did you learn from it?
I think it popped off because, I mean, there's two ways I can look at it, right? I think if you look at it from the pure content entertainment perspective, it's literally a proven method. It's a like, let's be real, it's a thirst trap. I worked on myself a lot, so I've gotten myself like in shape, and it's talking about something that's so contrary or something that you would not expect a thirst trap to be. And so I think it was that juxtaposition between those two so farly different things that captivated people. And you're not alone in thinking that. If you read the comments on that video, everyone will say like, dude, no one is listening to the book review. I'm like, ah, shit. Okay. I'm trying my best here. And what's funny is people were taking like the clips that I was posting on TikTok and reposting them on Twitter. And that got like so much more views than my TikToks ever did. Like, I think around the magnitude of like 3 million to like 5 million views, people would just like repost it. The internet is so interesting, man. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah. What do you think are the parts that is your platform? One obviously is, I guess, your muscles, but I'm just kind of curious how you think about it now, because I'm sure you have that founder product market fit mindset or exploration as well.
So I think my mindset towards finding product market fit as a creator is, again, I was mentioning the internal facing, right? It's really about my mindset towards all of this is that the internet is a huge place. And if you are vulnerable and you can be yourself and you have your own voice, the right communities will end up finding you. As long as you're consistent, as long as you are willing to stand out in formats and just be vulnerable. I think the word that comes to mind most is just putting yourself out there, not caring what people think, understanding that it will hurt, that you will get judged, but also understanding that you'll be judged regardless of whether you actually succeed on social media or not. So you might as well be judged for actually making it on social media. I think that was one of the core tenets I had to get over this mental block of everyone judging me. I was like, people are going to judge me anyway. They might as well judge me for the thing I want to do.
Ooh, interesting. So I think obviously vulnerability, authenticity, obviously those are big words. Why do you think people want it?
So I think I see social media as just fundamentally like the next level of human interaction. I'm probably making this sound way too deep. Essentially, it's just people connecting, right? And I think you can sense offline or online if someone is being genuine. And you kind of crave that real connection, right? Just being friends with someone. It's like going to your friend's house, just like hanging out, having a good time, and just like getting on with your day. And I think, especially with Instagram culture, which is very like polished, very curated, so to speak, I think the authenticity really shines through because it's like, oh, there are problems, there are things that I'm going through. And just like sharing that part of the process builds the connection that you have with the audience. And it's why they follow you, why they're invested in your journey. Right. So that's how I see the authenticity component to it. Right?
Is it scary because you have so much of your personal life is online? When I was going through your stuff, people were talking about your relationship, then they were talking about the breakup, then they're talking about
Yeah.
is the breakup false or fake,
Yeah.
and you're gonna get back together. And I was like, whoa, a lot of people talking about your relationship status.
Yeah.
What's that like for you?
I actually really enjoy it, as messed up as that is to say. And it's because I think emotionally I've learned how to distance myself from, I guess, like the character or the role that I'm playing online. I think the thing that actually what you're saying reminds me of was when I started doing all this content, when I started the couples channel, when I started my book reviews, my parents and I did not talk for like months. It was very rocky. Every time I'd like call them, I would cry and they would tell me, "What are you doing? We've built a reputation and you're just messing it all up." And that was probably the hardest point of everything. So once I was able to heal that relationship with my parents and once they got comfortable with me just like keeping on posting content, I found a lot of self-assurance and security because my family is important to me, right? And once I had that support from them, it was like, okay, I can do this type of thing. So I think just like having that base level layer of support and internal self of being secure is what allows me to like distance myself and be like, okay, people will talk regardless. And it's great for engagement. So please keep hating on my stuff because it has great views now because of that. Yeah.
No, so I think that's interesting, right? Because I think obviously you have one angle, which I know you from, which is the founder angle. Then two,
Yeah.
obviously, there's the TikTok one where you look like a pretty face with good muscles. So, and there's the third part where you're talking about, which is being a human at scale by being vulnerable and transparent about life. Oh, you're open about your relationships online, and people shit on you for being a pretty boy. And then your other mindset is like, oh, this hurts because people are shitting on me, but I'm also a founder and it's good for my engagement.
I think how I think about it is that there's obviously a very startup business minded approach to how I see content. But at the same time, I know the product is myself. And so it's understanding that people talk about productizing yourself all the time. I think if you want to do that, then this is the best way to do that. I love what you said. It's promoting yourself at scale. And I don't really find any particular cognitive dissonance when I approach things. I'm just like, hey, the product is a product. The job is a job. The audience is the audience, and build that community, build that real relationship with them. And everything just kind of works out. I'm definitely not really thinking about that, if that makes sense.
How do you brainstorm new ideas or formats? Because I find a lot of these things like TikToks or formats, like you said, like book talk, dissonance felt like a format that works, and now you have a series for that. Is it just like iterate on it and try it out? Or I think people are always trying to land on some format.
Yeah. So I have done two approaches, right? The first one is the original style content. And then the second one is basically the steal mindset of taking formats. The original ones are things like the book reviews or like the storytelling stuff that I do now. And that's more just like original ideas that come into me. Like, okay, let's say I have an idea and it's about like my breakup, right? What I would think is, what is the best way I can package this right now? And when I say packaging, it's essentially like we've all heard of the first 3 seconds, like the hook, right? But I think it's actually split into two parts where there's a visual hook and there's like an audio or speaking part to it. What does the first shot actually look like and why will that make people stop? And on the other hand, what are they listening to that will make them pay attention? So it's two different opportunities to get people to stop scrolling. And that's how I break it down. I think all ideas that I have are essentially I just think of the first 3 seconds. And I'm like, okay, I know what the rest of the video looks like because it doesn't matter as much as those first 3 seconds, right? So that's the first approach. The second approach is essentially the route where you steal like an artist, which for me, I have 2 burner accounts whose algorithms I have specifically tailored to feed me a certain type of content. And when I scroll those accounts and I save and I like the types of content I want to replicate, I essentially just copy the first book or format. And then I just kind of put a spin to whatever relates best with my brand. So I did that a lot with the couples channel I had before where I tailored the algorithm to show me couple stuff. We would essentially replicate it, but I'm ripped and my girlfriend has this like reputation. So you just replicate it and you do it on your own. I think that's like generally how I would bridge the two approaches.
Makes sense, right? And I think in art, like body is all kind of like looking at each other's work, being inspired by each other's work, and then doing their own spin or iteration of it.
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
the joy of creativity, and it's not stealing. It's just literally like you being
Exactly.
inspired by each other. I'm just kind of curious that when you look at yourself, how do you think about the future and how do you measure it? Is it like more followers, more views, more likes, or is it like more muscles, better glasses? I know you to be somebody who's a
Yeah.
little bit more metrics driven, so I'm just kind of
Yeah.
curious how that works out for you.
I think the metric I'm optimizing for right now, honestly, is influence. And I think that's measured via connection, which I know does not sound like a hard metric at all. It's probably the worst lagging indicator to track. I think how it manifests is if people would like stop me on the street and like take a picture, or like I was on a flight and like all the flight attendants came up to me and they're like going to the back of the plane and like, let's take a picture there. And then those moments really made me realize that, I am not isolated at all. Like this is a living thing that's going on. And I think that real like connection is the thing that I'm optimizing for, because I think, if I'm looking at this from a startup business lens, it really has the highest leverage. I think influence and connection is the highest leverage in this game, because let's say I wanted to launch a product in the future. And I already have people who actually trust me, who actually have a relationship and connection with that. And maybe we can like work together on some things. I think that is much better than optimizing for hard metrics like views, follower counts. It's the thing that cannot be measured, which is the most important. And sure, it can manifest like that. That sense of influence and connection can manifest in the form of hard social metrics, or even like brand deal cash or things like that. But at the end of the day, I think that is not the thing that I want to optimize for, because it is not the highest leverage opportunity in the long run. So that's how I think about like this business, right? How can I leverage my product, for future gain? Because it's a long game, right? Like I don't want to stop content creation in like 3 years. I want to like keep it going for as long as I can. So having that connection is the biggest lever.
My last question for you is, could you share a time that you personally have been brave?
I think this is the night when I decided, I had the vision to do this shirtless book review. And that was the point where, again, I was so concerned of like what everyone was thinking about me. I was so focused on how my parents react, how my relatives react. And again, I was reading this book at the time. I think it was called like The Greatness Mindset by Lewis Howes, which is where I found the quote that people will judge you regardless of whether you're successful or a failure. So you might as well be a success and have them judge you for that. And I took that, and I guess rewriting it in my own words, people will judge you whether or not you do social media and you be yourself and you do the craziest things, so you might as well make it work out. And at the moment, the time that I saw working out was, I have to do the most crazy thing I can think of. That is still me. And I think that was a turning point. I'm not a psychopath. I still care about what people think. You can't not think that, but it's more so being comfortable with that feeling and be like, you know what, fuck it. They're going to talk regardless. You might as well do something cool, Yeah, that was where everything started for me. Yeah.
And I'm actually quite curious because you said the night before filming the book talk idea was really scary and you went to do it. Like, did you feel self-conscious? I mean, taking off your shirt and I don't know, holding the book, and I'm just kind of curious how that came out, because that was the moment that kind of clicked for you, right? But I'm sure recording it, editing it, then publishing it, then having it click, like there's not like a component, right? So I'm just kind of curious.
It's interesting that you say that, because it was pretty instantaneous. I know I keep saying it's a mindset shift just like that. It's obviously not just like that. It took like weeks or months to build up. As I mentioned, I was doing other content. But once I got the idea, it was just go, go, go. I think that's the same way I approach like my startup too. I got the idea and I was like, all right, fuck it. What can we do? And it was the same mindset of like, okay, once I got that, the publishing and the posting and the editing, which were things I had already been working on regardless, was just like a second nature kind of thing. So I was like very prepared for when that moment struck. And literally, I think 30 minutes after I got the idea, the first video was out. And immediately it blew everything like out of the water that I'd previously done with that. So I think that's kind of just like how I operate in some extent. Like if I'm convinced and I believe in the idea, everything is just the natural byproduct of your preparation. And then, yeah, that's how I would describe the day I posted it, right? Yeah.
On that note, thank you so much for sharing. I love to summarize the Tribute takeaway. First of all, thanks so much for sharing about your dream of being, an On Deck podcast fellow, to building, On Deck for Southeast Asia, to building a startup and what you learned from there. I thought it was really fascinating to hear about that founder mindset they had, but also I think the tough decisions around having to wind down the business because of the post-pandemic pullback away from online courses. Secondly, thanks so much for sharing really about the grief they had from closing the company, but also the exploration process to figure out whether you're going to like stay in Canada or move back to the Philippines and be a content creator versus be a founder again or employee. So I thought it was just fascinating for you to acknowledge the self-work that you had about you wanting to do it for yourself and with yourself. So I thought that was super fascinating. Lastly, thanks so much for sharing about that interesting Venn diagram between, I think, first, of course, is, you still have a founder mindset that is metrics driven, improvement oriented. Secondly, content creator perspective, which is really about authenticity, transparency, being inspired by art and, iterating on other people's art as well. And lastly, of course, the personal self-improvement part where, you're eating lots of protein and getting very ripped and taking your shirt off. And I just find it super interesting because, I know a lot of people who are very ripped, and they're doing one side of the Venn diagram. A lot of founders who are doing one side of the Venn diagram. And I know content creators who are doing one side of the diagram. And to have all three of them where you're in the middle of the overlap is still very fascinating. And like I said, it's funny because how many people actually get to live all three of those lives together, right? So I think a fantastic journey that you've had so far, and I can't wait to see what's next for you in the next chapter.
Awesome. Let me know if you want some gym tips soon. Maybe that's another episode. Thanks so much for having me, man. This was really fun and great to connect also after all these years.
Okay, all right. See you, man.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.